Good evening, everybody. I am super honored and grateful to have you back to join us for this third and final act of our Black Men Feel panel discussion and performance series. We have a great panel tonight that I can't wait for you to meet. We got some great things that we're going to be talking about under this framing of healing. So before I introduce you to the other brothers and we dive into this conversation, I just want to give you a real quick sneak peek or an overview of what we're going to be talking about. So first, we're going to dive into a conversation about mental health and therapy because that's just super important. Whether people choose to go to therapy or not, being able to maintain mental health and identify when there are some of those cracks in that foundation, and there might need to be some more attention to that is important. So from there, we're going to dive into talking about self-care and preservation because again, that's just super important to be able to identify ways that we can practice and exercise self-care in those ways that we can just kind of allow ourselves to not have to be on and have to be so plugged into all these things that we have to do or that people need or want from us. From that point, we're going to talk about communication because we cannot overstate the importance of effective communication. Um, and for a lot of us, I feel like, when we communicate clearly and we say what the fuck we need to say, I think it makes things a lot more clearly, regardless of how people receive it. I think it's just very important to be able to communicate effectively. So we definitely want to pay some attention to that. From there, we're going to talk about vulnerability and visibility because for us as Black queer people, Black people, just whoever you are, it's important for people to be able to see themselves. And as we've seen with everything with this past election and what has happened and all this other kind of stuff, representation and those kinds of things matter. So visibility is important. So we're going to talk about that. And like I said, we definitely want to talk about vulnerability and what happens when we allow ourselves to just kind of let that wall down and let people in those ways in which we feel comfortable doing so. From that point, given that this is the holiday season and this is going to be a little difficult or more difficult for a lot of people because of the pandemic and all those things, we want to just pay some special attention to talking about chosen family and the importance of building community. Because pandemic or not, a lot of us have chosen families that are our rock and our anchor. So we want to just make sure we pay some attention to that and talk about the value of having people in your life that hold you accountable, that love you, that see you, that hear you, and that affirm you no matter what, because those things make a difference. Outside of that, we're going to go into talking about humor because life is heavy and hard and messy. And we want to be able to talk about the other side and what happens when we look at the lightness and just be able to find some of the laughter and the humor in some of the shit that happens because it tends to make it a little bit easier. And lastly, we're going to end the whole thing in terms of the conversation tonight about, we're going to be talking about centering joy and what happens when we just allow ourselves to center and find and insist upon having those light moments and being able to just have joy, whatever that looks like for us individually or as a community or as people collectively or what have you. Because again, I think that as we've been reminded in this year, there's a lot of stuff that comes up, and a lot of this stuff is very difficult and challenging. And I think we have to snatch up joy and find it and soak it up wherever we can. So we're going to pay some special attention to centering joy. I cannot wait for you to meet these other three brothers that are part of this panel. We got some old faces and a couple of new ones, but I know that it's going to be an amazing conversation. So I'm just going to ask you all to stick with us very shortly. We'll be back to dive into this conversation about healing and get this thing going. All right. So we'll be back shortly.
Now we are workers and fighters, heroes loud without any noise. And we've got work to do so everyone can feel this black boy joy. So take my hand, little brother, take my hand, proud father.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm super excited to have my three brilliant, beautiful panelists here. Three people who I just love and adore, and just very grateful to be taking this journey with me. As you can see, we have one familiar face who's been with us the whole time, and then we got a couple of new faces here. I'm just really excited to have all of them together to talk about this third act of Black Men Feel, which is aptly titled Healing, because we just felt like we wanted to round this out on a high note and give people some hope. So I'm just really looking forward to you meeting these panelists and diving into this conversation. So with that, I'm going to ask our veteran panelist, Daddy Rod, to just introduce himself very briefly. Take it away.
Hey everybody, I'm Daddy Rod, based here in the Atlanta area. I am a proud Leatherman, sex educator, HIV and sex worker advocate, proud member of Onyx, proud member of CNP Tribe, and
resume.
And I went to this school and I graduated with magna cum laude. No, I'm kidding. But and then I'm just glad to be here for the last act. And what I hope you get from this act, along with the other two that we have done already, is appropriately what we're talking about today is healing. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daddy Rob. We are glad to have you back. And, you know, I'm just super grateful for you being a part of this. This has been amazing, and we'll kind of get to that when we sign off at the end. But I just know I appreciate you, and I'm glad to have you here. Next up, we have my brother, my fellow Midwestern brother, and somebody who I love and admire and adore, and who has known about Brave Soul Collective and been involved probably from the beginning, because I met him about 2 or 3 months after we started in 2006, when we went to the International AIDS Conference in 2006. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Keith Green, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself from here.
And I think, I don't want to forget this, I think you need to revive some of those original Brave Soul t-shirts, because they were awesome and I can't fit them anymore.
We talked about that in the last act, because Daddy Rob basically challenged me and was told, bring these back. So that's already in the works. But
That's affirmation, right? Thank you, Monty, for inviting me to be a part. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you and the other panelists. My name is Keith Green. I'm currently an assistant professor at Loyola University, Chicago. As Monty said earlier, and a bunch of other things, but that's kind of the title I wear. But I'm also a man who lives, loves, works within the context of this community. And so what I hope to get and what I hope others get from this are, tips and strategies for engaging upon our own healing processes. Healing is a forever journey for me. And so I just hope to learn from others, but also share from my own experience so that we can learn from one another.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith. In addition to him being, as I call him, a bookworm, I've called him a bookworm for years. And, Dr. Green, and I used to do this at the Brave Soul Gathering, so I'm about to call him out because he didn't say it, but he is also just a brilliant poet and spoken word artist, and an artist in his own right. I mean, like I said, when I met Keith in 2006, I think, you had done a spoken word piece at an event in Chicago. And, it was just kind of like, I think, like you said, you saw me in the t-shirt. You were like, I need that shirt. Where did you get that from? That was literally how we met. I was walking down the hallway at a hotel in Chicago, and he was like, hold up. Where did you get that shirt? And it was like, oh, whatever. And from there, we've been besties and brothers, and been through ups and downs and all other kinds of stuff. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life, and just grateful to have you here as a part of this whole thing. So yes. And last but not least, the man, my brother, my CMP brother, and somebody who was just pivotal to this whole project, Mr. Johnny R. Cornegay III. I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and tell them who you are.
Hey there, everyone. It's funny. So I'm in this moment of kind of going down into my belly a little bit. So, hey, everybody. My name is Johnny Ray Cornegay III. And I am the creative director for CNP. So shout out to the CNP tribe. And I moonlight as an artist, photographer and filmmaker and strategist within our community and with other creatives. And it's something that I love. So what do I want folks to get out of this? I think to what Dr. Green was just saying, we're all on this healing journey, right? Healing is not a place that you get to and then you're healed, right? Life happens and there's always things, right, that we are constantly trying to get to the other side of. And so I want people to, one, understand that, that we're kind of all in this walk. And then two, hopefully some folks will get some tips and tricks for how to kind of put that one step in front of the other in the moments where things get tough. So I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And we are happy to have you. So thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Daddy Rod. And for anybody that's seen the other two acts, like you know that this is a very loose conversation, but it's honest. It's honest and it's truthful. And I think that's a cornerstone of what it is that I intended to start with Brave Soul Collective. And it's always going to come from the heart and just be very truthful. So yeah, I just encourage you all to just be as forthright and just as authentic as you can in terms of telling your stories and offering up your perspectives, because that's why I've asked you to be here. So with that, I said this to Johnny before we started recording, and we probably will allude to it later on, but the structure of this whole project really came about I could not have done without Johnny, because his involvement in this whole thing was just crucial. Because when I had this idea that kind of just came into my head, I was envisioning this whole thing being like one event, one virtual event, and just trying to pack everything all in. And Johnny just sat and listened, and he was like, this is great, this is beautiful. He was like, but I'm wondering what would happen if we broke this out into segments, because he's like, it's so much. He was like, we don't want to miss anything. We want to give everything its just due, and it's time to really be able to talk about it. So with that, I'm just grateful for you for that, Johnny. And definitely this third part about healing was definitely his idea, because we felt like, he said to me, the holidays, if we do this in December, the holidays are really hard for everybody. And, it's right after Thanksgiving, right before Christmas. And that's a difficult time for a lot of people in general. And then when you throw in this bitch 2020, and this fucking pandemic and all the bullshit that's come along with it, it's like, it's going to make it even more difficult for people. So I just felt like, and, I'm glad that Johnny had the foresight to suggest to me that we do it this way, because we wanted to leave people on an up note. We wanted to leave people with some hope and some tips and some, some affirmation, because this has been very difficult. We've talked about some very serious things, but with this one, even if we're talking about stuff that's serious and heavy, we're gonna find ways to navigate and move through this shit so that it doesn't take us down any lower. We wanna just make sure we keep our vibrations lifted. So it's in that spirit that, as we dive into this conversation about healing, I wanna just kind of throw the question out to each of you. Looking at your journeys in terms of things that have happened in your lives, in your lives in terms of, whatever things might have come up. And I'll let it, whoever wants to go first, just dive in. But what does that process look like for you in terms of healing? Because like you said, it's not it's not you just do it and it's over. It's a process. So does anybody want to share a little bit more about what that process of healing has looked like for them?
I'll go first. As you somewhat already alluded to already, it's a process. It's an ongoing thing, because we all have our trials and tribulations in our lives, and they affect us very differently. And you first have to, I know for me personally, because it's evolving and continuing on, my form of healing is actually letting go of a lot of people who I thought, well, maybe who they were my friends, but I think we alluded to it back in Act 2. We talked so much, I can't remember what we talked about. But how some people are in our lives who are seasoned, and sometimes holding on to people when that season is over kind of can prevent you from healing. Does that make sense? And it's hard because, especially it's hard when that season ends and that person or persons you were cool with, there was no animosity or nothing like that. It's just ended. And, it's hard because I'm going through that right now with a lot of people, but I try to go back into meditation, and it's like, God is working things out for a reason. These people were in your life for a reason. Whether I learn from it or not, that's for me to find out, and for me to continue to pray on. But Just letting go of that kind of, it's almost like a dead weight, and not in a negative way. It could be in a negative way and also in a good way, because it's just, they're moving on. You have to move on, because you can't accept your new blessing if you keep holding on to something that, you know what I'm saying? So, and that's a part of that healing in aspect. So, and it is also, for me, my healing also includes just finding things that I'm passionate about. So I think for most of us now I don't know Keith, but I know you, Monty, and Jay, music is my healing. The
Same
gym.
can be said of Keith. He's an audiophile like me. So
Okay. Again, I don't know him, so I don't know. But glad to know that you're into the music too. And like the gym is like my healing for me, allows me to get my mind, body, and spirit in one accord.
mm-hmm.
And also realizing, we've all heard this phrase that, and it's very true, that sometimes less is more. So I don't need a lot of people around me all the time. I used to need people all around me because my insecurities, but now I realize, like, I just don't need a lot of people around me no more. Mm-hmm. Especially with, and I don't know about you all, but a lot of people now are very transactional. There's really hardly anyone really genuinely trying to get to know you.
Right.
And that's a whole conversation all in itself. I think it's all been driven because of social media, but so I've learned to like love being by myself. And in a way, that's a good healing. It's an odd feeling at times, I won't lie, because Johnny knows me. I'm very personable, and I'm well known, but yet I'm still a very private person. So I'm rambling, but
Okay.
that's pretty much it. I'll leave it at that.
No, and I mean, like you said, all of those things definitely, I think, like Johnny said, healing is like, none of this shit is a straight line, none of it. No. And I think it looks different for people. It looks different for each of us depending on what else might be going on in our lives. Because sometimes, like you said, that healing has to do with somebody else, and a lot of times, more often than not, it's got to do with us and kind of holding a mirror up to our own shit and being able to tell the truth and acknowledging things without guilt or shame or any of that. So to keep it going, Johnny or Keith, either you have anything just in general, because we're going to get into this deeper, but just in general, in terms of thinking about something specific, in terms of what that process of healing has looked like for you. Anything?
Yeah, it's looked different at different times. I think the beauty of living, and as Jericho Brown so eloquently said, getting time behind you, is that you get new tools. So the way I heal from things today is not what I would have done 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
That's mature.
Yes, exactly. And so I will say that, so that process of healing first comes, it always starts with me for the recognition of something that I need to heal from. So that acknowledgement helps. And then it's working back from there. And it could be in a lot of different ways. Some productive, but I'm a human being. So sometimes it's not productive and it's not a good way. So it's recognizing that too. But I will say the process of healing for me has been starting with recognition of a hurt or something that I need to leave behind, and then working through the process of putting it away.
Okay.
So yeah.
That makes sense. That was a real roadmap. So thank you. That was a cut and a clear, concise way of summing that up, which makes sense. So thank you. Keith, what about you? I see your wheels turning over there. What's going through the head over there?
Yeah. So, thinking about more recent experiences with healing, it's really been about peeling back the layers of the hurt and then just really unpacking very intentionally each of those layers, right? Because oftentimes, particularly in long-standing relationships with people, there are lots of pieces, lots of things, excuse me, that have happened, that we've done to one another, or whatever the case may be, that we, sort of move past but don't actually resolve or heal from. And I had a really interesting situation with my mother this past summer, where we literally didn't speak for a month. And it's probably the first time I'm publicly sharing that. But that took literally sort of peeling back these layers of our relationship and stuff that, I've kind of brushed over or danced around since I was a child till now, and really sort of deal with some of that with the help of a therapist, in order to sort of, reconcile our relationship and move past it, because it isn't one of those relationships. Well, that's not true. Right? You can't cut your parents off. Right? If you have toxic parents or toxic family members, they can get it too. But right. But I didn't necessarily. I mean, for a minute, I thought about doing that. That was something that crossed my mind, but that wasn't something that I wanted to do. So I really had to do the work to sort of dig deep and peel back the layers of our relationship and heal, or work to heal, each of those layers individually and separately. But at the end of the day, those layers also contribute significantly to the person that I've become, and are deeply intertwined in how I move through the world right now and how I engage in relationships with other people right now. So there was a lot of disruption that I had to do with my own life in the midst of a pandemic and all of that kind of stuff, right? So healing for me right now is really sort of peeling back the layers, but then, not just peeling them back, but doing the work to heal each of them.
No, that makes sense. And as you were talking and thinking about what you just said, and thank you for that. Hearing, what you used as your example and what Johnny used as his, and then what Daddy Rod used as his example, it's like all of them are very similar, because it always comes back to us in terms of us, the individual, in terms of what it is that we do. But you spoke specifically as an example about your mother. Johnny spoke specifically about a lot of stuff having to do with himself, directly. Daddy Rod spoke about and alluded to things having to do with other people who may have been friends. And again, I think that, we all have these experiences where sometimes that shit collides and it all comes all at once. And sometimes there are these isolated things, like you said, with a family member, or somebody who's close that you have history with. There is I always say, when there's something to salvage, when it's worth fighting for, my nigga, I'll roll up my sleeves and go through the fire with you, but I can't do that alone. And it's been so many times where I've had to try to fight to try to save and salvage relationships, but I was the only one fighting. And I had to literally remind myself, what the fuck am I doing this for? Because whether it's relationships of a romantic sort or friendship or family, I can't be the only one doing the heavy lifting. And I had to learn that shit the hard way. Because somebody who has a big heart, we're like, right here, love me. Let's try to figure it out, whatever. And, that shit would happen to my detriment. So I just had to point that out, because I think that that's very unique. And I think, again, all these things none of this shit happens in a vacuum. And this year has been, if it ain't been nothing else, it's been a demonstration of how all this stuff can happen all at once. And we still have to find a way to anchor ourselves and be, and stay afloat. So to segue into, because Keith, you mentioned it, and I think Daddy Rod, you mentioned it as well. What we want to move into now is talking about one of the very meaty things about this particular segment is mental health, and more so talking about therapy. Because I think particularly in the Black community, there's still a lot of stigma around going to therapy. And to me, it's problematic, because again, this whole, I even remember an episode of Blackish where, Jennifer Lewis's character, she was like, Black people don't need therapy. We need Jesus and we take baths. And, it's funny and it was cute, but it was kind of like, this is the kind of shit that a lot of our elders and other people from other generations, they really believe that. And I don't think it has to be one or the other. Like, my nigga, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like, we can do more than one thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think that for a lot of us that are our age, and particularly some of the younger ones, we have to be able to just allow ourselves to be open enough to try to do something different. If what we've been taught and what's been passed down to us has not been fucking working, then how about we throw that shit out and try again and go back to the drawing board? So with that, I just want to, again, I want to open up a conversation to ask you each if there's something, if how you feel about therapy, or if that's a process that you've engaged in, and if you have, just very briefly to just speak about what that process was like for you to get into it, or what prompted you to start it, and what that's been like for you. So anybody want to go first?
I mean, I'll certainly jump in. I loves me some therapy. I do. I am an advocate for it. I used to say this thing in my youngin years that I said, I feel like all Black folk in America, like we need a collective therapy session. Just get us all on the TV, put it amazing, just get us, just sit us all down. We can do our thing, right? But in all seriousness, I am an advocate for therapy. And for me, my first experience with therapy was right after college. First of all, I was in this crazy relationship that was doing a whole thing. And then I was in this very corporate job that required a lot of me. And, I didn't know where to put all the stuff that I was dealing with. And this Black woman. So I called the people, that the company said I could call a number and they'll refer somebody. And they referred this woman. And I showed up and she got me good and together. Okay. I couldn't hide, because you couldn't hide in there. Mm-hmm. It was just me and it was her. And it was like, she would be real quick on Johnny, you leaving something out. Like, I need you to work on this. So anyway, the point is, that was my first experience with therapy. And I realized for me how important it is. And like I said, I'm a huge advocate for it. I feel like I'm actually in the process right now. The most difficult thing, and this is why I'm in this process right now, is finding a therapist that works for you. Mm-hmm. I was lucky the first time. God does a thing, and I've been very fortunate throughout my entire life. And that was one of them. God was like, I am going to put the right person. His first experience is going to be it. So he will know what good is from here on out. Right. So it's a process that I'm currently trying to work through, because I am at the point where therapy is always needed. Like I needed it in the in-between time too, but I'm definitely at the point where I'm ready to start the process again. And my big thing is finding someone who's good at it, and good for me, most importantly. And so that's why I'm always encouraging folks, if it's something that they want to do, take it seriously, because you're truly helping people to heal from things and also take themselves to the next level. Like, so many of us have hopes, dreams, aspirations, but those things keep us where we are. And I feel like it's our therapist that we talk to who can help us to unpack it and be able to still move forward and being the successful folks we want to be. So that's my stuff about therapy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. What about you other brothers? Anybody have anything and again, it doesn't have to be, involved, but, or do you have anything, in terms of anything you want to share about that process or what it's been like?
Well, I do want to say that I completely agree with Johnny about the match, right? And I think that's critically important. And it was truly a blessing, Johnny, that that first therapist worked out for you. And I think, we need to be spreading that word just a little bit more throughout our community, that it is about match. And if you attend a session or 2 sessions or 5 sessions and decide this ain't for me, it might not be the process is not for you. It could very well be that therapist isn't for you. And that's okay. You can do the work to find somebody who works for you. And I think that is an important message to put out there. I've also, I've lucked up and found therapists along the way who've also been really great matches for me. I'm a firm believer in, sort of, I think we should treat therapy like we should treat our mental health like we treat our physical health, right? So every 6 months or every year, we go for a checkup, even if nothing's wrong. They take blood. They just sort of make sure everything is working as it should. And I think we should treat therapy in a similar way. And then sometimes it requires a little, more intensive work. So, you'll attend on a regular basis. And so I was in a position recently where it did require a little more intensive work. Because I've been in the process before, I kind of knew that that's where I was, that I needed a little more intensive work because of what was going on with me. But, I was a very active child. And I think I was taken to therapy the first time, shut up, Monty, at about 8 years old. And I'll never forget this because I had been going to a few sessions and that whole thing. And then at one point, the therapist decided that she wanted to have a conversation with my mother and my stepfather. And that freaked them out. And then there was no more therapy for me. So I wasn't trying to get out of it. I was just trying to get the therapist to see that I wasn't the only problem in the room.
How about it? Well, no, that makes sense. And I love what you said in the early part about the match, because some of what everybody will see when they watch the performance video that's beside this, that we have put together. One of the scenes is specifically about a Black gay man in his 30s who is going to see a therapist for the first time. And, I've always said to people in terms of therapy, when they ask me what the process was like, or, what it was like for me, I said, don't go out in the rain if you don't want to get wet. Like, that's what this is. Because going into that process, you have to go into it being prepared. Like you said, maybe not on the first meeting, or, not just initially. It's not like you just come out and just have this verbal diarrhea where you just tell everything. But therapy and those relationships, it's about trust. As much as we have to trust the person and get to know them, they have to trust and get to know us. And it's a dance. It's a dance, and it's a very delicate dance. So like you said, Keith, in terms of people understanding, you might go see 3 or 4 therapists and they may not be a fit. I've had to say that to several people to just remind them, okay, one of the clear ways for you to get clear about what you don't want, or excuse me, one of the clear ways for you to get clear about what you want is to get clear about what you don't want. So everyone where that wasn't it, it was like, okay, that ain't it. So I think that that's just very important, and it shows up a lot of time. Daddy Rod, did you have anything you wanted to chime in and say about this?
To concur with my other brothers, finding that right match is very, very important. I'm a firm believer, and I know this is very controversial, but I don't care, that you should not seek therapy from your pastor or your bishop or your apostle. And I'm a firm believer in that because a majority of them are not licensed therapists, nor have they received a master's or a doctorate in psychology.
Right.
Now, this is not to say that someone who doesn't have one can't give you sound advice. Because like my grandmother, she only had a GED, but she was a wise woman. But overall, with how church is now, and most of them think they're been anointed to preach, and most of them need a damn therapist. So let's not even get started with that shit. So how you gonna try to therapy me and you need a therapist? Bitch, please. So I'm like, no.
Sure.
And then they're gonna try to throw the Bible at you. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no, this is not the right way. So finding that match is very key, because the one and only time I did get a therapist was after my second suicide attempt. And I said, okay, I need to see somebody. And I happened to run across someone who was recommended to me by a friend. And she was good. She really, I already kind of knew what was wrong, but she really, like you said about don't go outside if you don't want to get wet, because it's like the truth was just being thrown back in my face.
Daggers, bitch.
And it was like, whew. But it was needed.
Mm-hmm.
because it goes back to part of my healing, because you get question like, why am I getting the same type of friends, or why am I circling around the same kind of people and everything like that. And so I'm a big proponent of it. I do think we as a community don't really what's the word I'm trying to say? We don't really advocate, that's the word, therapy enough. I'm glad a lot of people are actually saying that they are seeking therapy, whatever, but I think it's still very, unfortunately, taboo for a lot of people. And there's that stigma like, ooh, he's seeing a therapy, he crazy, you know? And I personally, like, this is just me, but if I knew someone was kind of crazy and they went to a therapist, I'd be like, you know, I admire him because he realizes something is wrong.
Right.
Compared to someone else who's like, oh, I don't need no problem. I'm like, bitch, you need to see a therapist.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's very important. And yeah, I can't stress enough how seeing a right, qualified, licensed therapist is very important.
Absolutely. No, and I appreciate you pointing that out, because there have been a lot of people, and again, you know, I think having someone to talk to, and again, I said this before, therapy may not be the way for everybody, you know what I'm saying? But I do think that it's a useful tool that a lot of us, I think, like you said, I think there's a boogeyman effect around it that, you know, a lot of us in the Black community still have. And once you take that away, it's just kind of like, you really understand it's not about you being crazy. It's not about any of that. It's really just about you being able to have a means to be able to process all the shit that's being thrown at you, all the stuff that you're carrying. And like you said, almost kind of like connecting the dots, like you said about relationships, about the ways in which you show up in relationships, the ways in which, you know, you communicate with people.
Well,
and
it really boils down to trauma and unresolved trauma.
Right.
So if you don't deal with the trauma in your life, whether it be psychological, physical, sexual, whatever, or a combination of all of it, if it's not dealt with, it manifests itself in other ways,
right,
which could damage. Then you wonder why do I get in abusive relationships all the time, or why am I around these certain type of people? And due to whatever trauma that you've dealt with, you try to you think you kind of solved it yourself, when actually you haven't. You pretty much kind of skirted it to the side. I'm like, okay, I'm okay, but I won't keep doing what I'm doing. It's like, no, you gotta hit it to the head. It's like, why am I doing the same thing all the time? You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And the last thing I'll say about this, because I think we could have a whole conversation about
that's a whole conversation
on mental health, which will probably be something we'll continue in 2021, because I do think we need to, you know, pay some really special, concentrated attention, more attention to this. But I think as I'm hearing you speak and hearing what Johnny said and what Keith said, and thinking about, I've had 3 different therapists now over the course of 2008, 12 years, almost 12 years and counting. And the biggest thing, like Johnny said, to that first therapist, that she got him together. Therapy is about accountability, because if you got the right one, they're like, you know, because again, we know our bullshit, we know our trappings, we know when we're not telling ourselves the truth. And when you're in therapy, like you said, you're cornered. You are cornered. You can't sit there and lie to yourself, because they may not say, well, you're lying and you're not. It's like, sometimes it's real subtle and it's real shady as fuck, but you kind of like, wait, did you just, and it's kind of like, ouch, like, okay, like I got that. Because again, they call you on your shit, but I think it's not this confrontational kind of calling you on it.
No,
it's putting it back in front of you in a way so that you can see, because I think sometimes we don't realize that this is what we're doing. So it's kind of like,
that's why some people don't like the process.
Right.
They don't like to be confronted with ourselves.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard as hell to be confronted with yourself and have to figure out what to do with it.
Right. And I think the biggest thing about it is, when you can, and this is what I had to learn about therapy, when you can go into it and acknowledge all of those things, but you can subtract the guilt, the shame, it was my fault, I did this wrong. When you can look at all of it and say, okay, I allowed myself to be treated this way in this relationship because I didn't feel good about myself, or I didn't feel worthy. That's enough. That's a starting point. As opposed to you saying, okay, well, you let this person walk all over you because, because you're stupid or what. No, that's the advice you get from a friend that, don't really know what the fuck they're talking about. They might mean well, but, having a professional that can really sit with you and help you sift through all of that in a way that puts it back on you, that gives you an opportunity to think through it and kind of do some of that work after you leave that office. That's the gift and all that. So I think the biggest thing about this is, as we move into the next part, which is self-care and self-preservation. For me personally, therapy, like I said, I started in 2008. And Keith, I don't know if you remember this, but before I did start, I remember having a conversation with you and with my friend, his brother, Dyron Holmes, my brother, Dyron Holmes in Brooklyn in New York. And it was you two that basically told me, you were like, I think that it's a good time for you to go ahead and start because you give so much to everybody else and you're doing all this other stuff. And it had been like 2 years into starting Brave Soul Collective in 2006. And it was in 2008 because the doctor that I was with at that point, she said, I think we need to get you on treatment for your HIV. My numbers were good, but it wasn't undetectable. And she felt like starting treatment was a good time for me to start therapy too. And it did, because it made all of it way more real. I skirted through the first 3.5 years of being HIV positive with, like it was real, but it wasn't real. And then when I had to start taking that medication, which it was about a 30-day, adjustment, and it was fine. But from there, it was the mental and the emotional shit that came with it, that it was like, you can't do this by yourself. And Keith, I remember you saying it to me and Dyron saying to me, it was like, I think it would be a good idea for you, to do that, because when you give as much as some of us do, and even if you don't, if you're not a giver for anybody, but particularly for people who are nurturers, people who, who offer up themselves to the public as artists or activists or anything in terms of the kind of work that they do, you have to be able to find ways to take care of yourself, to take better mental care of yourself. So as we segue into this whole thing about self-preservation and self-care, because we still got a lot to get to, but I do want to just kind of just jump into this really quick. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about self-care? Because I know by now it's become almost kind of like one of those catchy, I feel like some of that term has just kind of deflated for me, but I ultimately at the core, I know what it means. But, does anybody have anything they want to say about the importance of practicing self-care, or how you found your way to that?
Well, for me, again, and I keep repeating it, but it just stresses importance for me, just music in the gym. Because when I'm at the gym, even though there's great eye candy, I ain't gonna lie.
That could be self-care.
But it's like my time when I was unemployed for so long, it was like my outlet to see people. And even though I really wouldn't talk to them or whatever like that, it just really just when I had my music going, and sometimes I have like gospel house or sometimes some very meditative type music going on, and I would just literally just be in deep meditation. Was one girl who's like she's a Delta, and she's like, "You're always looking so mean when you're at the gym." I'm like, I'm not trying to look mean. I was like, I'm just really in deep thought. Mm-hmm. And I'm like praying and I'm praying and I'm praying just for like, one, for gratitude for just being alive. Two, thanking God and the universe for bringing me thus far, because my life hasn't been perfect, but I'm here. And then during that same time, I'm asking like, what is it that I haven't done? What will that I need? What do I need to do to bring that joy back into my life? Because that was a problem. There was no joy in my life. I enjoyed being around people and I loved entertaining and everything like that, but I didn't really get no joy. And again, it was going back to my insecurities, because I just wanted people around me because I just felt special, but I didn't really feel it. So I was like finding out those things. And then, so the gym really allows me to get that, allows me to become centered. Mm-hmm. And then I ain't gonna lie, I've been seeing great results. So I've been like, okay.
Yes.
So it's a continuation. So, and that's a part of self-care too, because they're not going to touch myself, especially in these COVID days. How about that? Yeah, that's what it is for me, and also cooking. Cooking for me is very therapeutic. I make either a cobbler or a cake. Yeah, Johnny's like, yeah. And again, it allows me to think, and so all that whipping and everything else allows me to do what I need to do. And of course, if I can get into a nice BDSM session too, that's very therapeutic.
Come on. and no, I think all of those things, like you said, I think, identifying what those things are super important, and I'm glad that you pinpointed what those are for you. And again, Keith and Johnny, I welcome you to kind of share some of what those things are for you. But what I'm really more interested in, what I'm also just fascinated by is, because for me, it took me time to get there, to realize like I had to give myself permission. You know what I'm saying? To like, okay, you don't have to work and do this. Like, you don't have to do anything. Like, if you want to binge watch TV, like you said, for me, it's playing my vinyl on Sundays. And y'all know I post shit on Facebook and on Instagram or whatever when I'm in the kitchen cooking and listening to old Shaka Khan and, jamming to Aretha Franklin and, giving a shimmy shake and, all this other kind. It's those things that make me feel good. But I had to find a way to get there. So, if there's anything that any of you have to say about, and maybe that was just me, but, Johnny and Keith, you have anything you want to chime in about with regard to that?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is what I've come to understand as radical self-care, which, I had to learn to practice this past summer. Again, I had this thing going on with my mom. Pandemic is happening. I work in education, so we're trying to figure out what the fall semester is going to look like. And then George Floyd is murdered. Right? And, I'm at a predominantly white institution, predominantly white Jesuit institution. And everybody's trying to, everybody wants to check in on me as the lone Black man on faculty in my department. But then there's also just all of these conversations around like, what are we gonna do? And what should we be doing? And at the time that it all happened, actually, I was already engaged in a bit of self-care. So I'm like, my phone is there, which I shouldn't have had on at the moment anyway, if I'm self-caring, right? But you're looking at social media, all that stuff, but I check my email and I see these conversations happening. At the time, I'm literally standing by a swimming pool. I'm in New Jersey, cleaning out the swimming pool at a friend's house, getting ready to get in it. And I just snapped a picture, or I had my friend snap a picture of me cleaning out that pool. I sent it to the entire thread at work. So this is where I am. When I'm done, I'll be back to this conversation. Right. You're not gonna put all of that on me right now.
Right.
First of all, I shouldn't be the sole Black man in this department. That's first and foremost. And second of all, like, just no. No. I need to, even outside of this big thing that's happening in our world right now, I need this space for myself and other stuff I have going on. So I'm not going to give you any energy.
Right.
So I think like radical self-care, being able to say, regardless of what's going on or who demands whatever from you in the time that they demand whatever from you, that I'm at a point that if I don't take care of myself, nothing's going to get done. Right. I'm going to break. So you either have to accept that and we'll deal with the consequences later, or you don't, and we'll still deal with the consequences later.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think the underlying thing about what you said about that, which kind of goes back to therapy, and I'm making a mental note because it'll show up in something else that we wind up doing that we might talk about and also perform. Boundaries. That's been a huge piece of my whole journey with therapy. Boundaries. Like you drawing that line in the sand with them at work to say, okay, like this is where I am. I'll deal with that later. And like, no. Because again, people will take as much as we allow them to. And I think sometimes, we've gotten into the culture and the society and all this other kind of stuff. It's almost like this real sick, twisted glamorization of being busy and always doing shit and being a hamster on the wheel. And I'm like, baby, listen, we have a battery inside of us And when that motherfucker does not get charged, we get sick, we get tired, we become depressed, and all of those things. Again, I've had it all happen at the same time where my body was like, yeah, I'm not moving. You done took this from me. I'm not doing shit else until you let me recharge.
Yeah, it affects your overall health.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that's very, very important too. But Johnny, before we move on, did you have anything you wanted to chime in about with self-care and self-preservation?
So the truth is I'm really bad at it. And I'm bad at it and I know where that comes from. There's a worthiness thing in there. I'm still working on that. That's one of the things that, you know, we have to get to in therapy. So there's that. There is also the being an overachiever. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some foolishness and history in that too. Being a young Black gay boy, you figure, especially being a young fat Black gay boy, you figure out that, oh, here's the way I make myself important. But until you check that stuff, it sticks with you. Like it stays there, and it's hard to outgrow that.
You carry it.
You carry it. And so therapy, that's why therapy is important. So I am, I feel like any way for me, let me stick with me, for me, any way, any time that I take to do something that I love is important. I don't do it as often as I should. But, you know, I'm sitting in front of my records. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just got a new record today. It's really rare. I'm really excited about it. It's a whole thing. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is when I get a chance to put that on when we are done and and sit, that will be important. That'll be a moment. So for me, it's a process. I'm learning how to do it, y'all. I'm not good at it. But I have to get better. I have to get better at it because I know that at some point my body is going to do it. That thing that you just said, Monty, it's going to be like, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. You've run us down. Okay. Now I'm sitting you down so that you can build back up. And I don't want to get to that point. So that's the truth.
And we appreciate that. And I appreciate you being honest because if nothing else, I want people to get, like I said, none of us are masters at any of this shit. I mean, we're all on different points in the spectrum, but again, we have to be able to be honest with ourselves, in therapy or not, you know, about, again, we know our trappings. We know the shit that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better versus the truth. And we know how we can try to finesse one of them just to make the other one be justified, just to get through this week. And I'm just going to do this. And it, baby, manipulation 101. And it's all shit that we do to ourselves. So, you know, again, it's very honest. So I want to move along to, because again, I think there is a bit of a threading to this. I'd like to ask you all about what role you think being vulnerable and also being visible plays in your overall mental health. And, you know, we can use the framing as us all being Black, queer, or Black gay men. But even outside of that, just in terms of people and human fucking beings, what does that mean to you to be vulnerable, and what role do you think that plays in your overall mental health? Or has it, you know, has not being vulnerable, what does that cost you in the way of your mental health, if anything? Anybody?
When you mean vulnerable, do you mean by being more public about it, or more?
I mean, being vulnerable means, you know, like just being forthright with somebody, you know, with other people in terms of what you know, how you feel, all those kinds of things. Yeah.
Well, for me, I mean, even through my darkest times, I remember my parents always stressed to be don't be afraid to really express yourself to other, you know, but use discretion in who you tell now, because everybody don't even know your business.
Right.
But when you find that right person or persons, you know, again, part of healing is opening up and letting them know how you feel, because sometimes, you know, like, God, this is really going deep. Because I remember when Robin Williams, the comedian, died. That hit a chord with me because he had a statement, and I'm paraphrasing, what he was saying, and I did this a lot through my childhood and even until recent, a few years ago, I did my best to make other people happy and feel good because I didn't want them to know what I was going through.
Okay, I'm feeling attacked.
And, because I felt like if I did let some people know, they wouldn't either understand or they wouldn't care. And with my parents, I could have told them. I honestly could have. But I know my parents too. And they would have been like clamping down on me like a leash to a body. And I was like, step back. So I didn't really tell them. But when I found a couple of people I could really talk to, it did a wonder. It was like a wondrous thing because it was like, I felt like I could breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was just holding so much on my back. And like when the party was over, and I think, Johnny, you've been to my house when I had a few gatherings at my house, I believe. And I really enjoyed doing them. Don't get me wrong. I really honestly did. But like when everybody went home with their friends or whatever, it was like this incredible loneliness hit me. It was just like, ugh. And when I went to that, and that's right before I had my second suicide attempt, and that's what I need to see a therapist. And he got me together, and I wish I could have continued with him, but at the time I couldn't because money was low. I lost my job, and I ended up becoming a caregiver of my grandparents in Alabama for like 13 years. So that kind of helped me in a way. I won't say it helped me, but it kind of pushed to the side my issues because I had to deal with their issues. So I didn't really have time to think about me, even though I did take care of myself to a degree. But now that they've transitioned on to the spiritual realm, I've really become really in tune with myself, and I feel so good. It's still a process though, but I feel a lot better though. I really do feel a lot better, and having those few individuals I could really talk to really has helped a lot. It really has helped a lot.
Good. I mean, and like you said, I think all of that is what you just said is, I mean, that's not uncommon. Some of us have been taught to kind of put our own feelings on the back burner. I mean, we all were raised by Black women, and what have Black women done all their lives but put everybody else first before themselves? And again, we sit up, a lot of us watched that and saw that and thought that was the way that, we're supposed to do a lot of things. And again, I know that's not everybody's truth, but I know for a lot of us, I mean, that's what happens. And
especially the gay Black men.
Right. And it manifests.
Because we have this strong kinship if you have a good relationship with your mother, which I think most people do. Most Black gay men do. But like you just said, like, I know my mother was like what you just talked about. So I made it a point to like help her so she would feel, I'm not saying she feel validated. That's not the right word, but feel loved and that she had that support system and everything like that. But that put my self-care on back burner. You know what I'm saying? But at the time I didn't care because I wanted to make sure my mama was okay.
Right.
So we were taking care of my grandmother together and my grandfather. So it was a collaborative effort in that aspect. So
yeah. Absolutely. So Johnny, Keith, anything about being visible or being, allowing yourself to be vulnerable? Because we're kind of hitting on two different things. And I think that, they're all relevant, but anything?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I, for many years, was an extrovert, like a high E. And weirdly, so probably like 15 years ago, I moved to the middle. And then, and I was weirded out by that. I thought it was something wrong. Because, you did the Myers-Briggs. I was in corporate America and it's a thing all the time. And when I moved, I actually spoke to the person that did it. She was like, oh, that's actually not completely out of character. Some people balance as they age.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, cool. Now I'm on the I. I'm not a high I, but I'm mostly I. So being visible, I want to tackle that first.
Okay.
It's hard. Like it's one of those things because I am a visible person. And I don't mind. I can do the thing. I can get the thing done. I can get on stage. I can have the conversation. I can do all of that. No problem. But baby, when I am done, after I've done this, I promise you, it is going to be this music going and like nothing else. I will be solo boots for the rest of the night because I got to recharge. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so that helps my emotional and my mental health. Being vulnerable, I had to learn to be. There was actually a relationship that I was in for 5 years that actually helped me become like more vulnerable. I recognized that I had to say things because if I didn't say them, they would build up and then it would be like a whole one small thing would become this big thing. And I had to learn for me, and we were both on this journey together, but this is very much, I had to learn to say what I was feeling in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I didn't say it then, it was coming back.
And it was snowball.
And it was snowballing to this thing. And then I remember him looking at me one day and he was like, you can't like hold something against me from 2 months ago that you ain't never say nothing about. Like, how does that work? And I had to sit with it and was like, you know what? That's the thing. You doing that black man thing where you hold your emotions in and you trying to be big man, but you and then you get in your feelings when something's happening. So being vulnerable, so that requires vulnerability, right? You have to be able to say, that made me feel good, or that didn't make me feel good. And say it. First of all, you're giving the person an opportunity to know what you're feeling, and that's a beautiful thing. And it helps my mental health because I've now verbalized how I feel.
Right.
So I've gotten better about being vulnerable, and it's really, really helpful for me. But yes, being visible adds some complexity to it. But being vulnerable is helpful.
Okay, and again, I wherever you all are in what you share, the beauty of it is, like I said, none of this shit is a straight line. Life zigs and it zags and it goes up and down. And I think it's all of us being, in a similar age range. It's like we've lived long enough, and like we've learned how to put our gay big boy pants on. You know what I'm saying? And live through some shit. You know what I'm saying? Literally and figuratively long enough to know, like, this is not easy. You know what I'm saying? And I think by the time we do get, start approaching your 40s, it's like, I know how to do this. You know what I'm saying? And it's a whole new set of challenges and things that come along. But it does, I think, if you're paying attention, some of this stuff becomes, your roadmap and your pathway to figuring out what works for you becomes clearer. But Keith, did you have anything you wanted to chime in on about this, about either?
Yeah, so I feel like I am naturally vulnerable. I naturally allow myself to be vulnerable without a whole lot of regard for the consequence. On the other side of that, though, is I'm also very intuitive and have developed strength over the years where I can feel when that vulnerability is being taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
And you really don't want that person.
Right.
But I think that's like knowing myself, right? It's taking time and years to sort of know myself and know that and be okay with just being a naturally vulnerable person. I think it's a gift, quite honestly. But intuition is also a gift, right? And being able to get a bitch together is also
Come on.
So all your gifts have to come into play, and you have to know them and when to apply them as it relates to vulnerability.
It's like learning how to use a superpower. That's what I call it.
Absolutely.
What else is it if it's not a superpower in terms of, again, the vulnerability piece, the part about enforcing boundaries, about your line in the sand? Because again, I think that there's this misconception that when you enforce a boundary or you kind of advocate for yourself, it doesn't have to be combative. It doesn't have to be nasty. It doesn't have to be confrontational. People might take it that way and they will try to, deflect and put the shit back on you. But I'm like, okay, no is a complete sentence and we ain't got shit else to talk about. I had to get to that point, but I will tell a motherfucker no and look at you just like this, like the fuck else you want me to say? Because when the tables are turned and I need something, you'll tell me no, or you won't even respond to a fucking text message or get back to me. And you send an indirect fuck you. So guess the fuck what? I mean, sometimes, and that's in certain situations, but I think that all of these things are very important, and I appreciate you all sharing your insight about that. So from there, what I really want to move into, and this is the last thing on the actual list of things, and then we're going to start to wrap up. But this last one is these two things are the most important parts. And again, I point back to Johnny, because again, I love you and I'm just so grateful. And it's something that I really feel, with everything that you've shared about your journey and how you had to get to these places, it's something that I think for me, it personifies what you represent to me, because from the minute I've met you, you were just very loving and just very much like, come here, come give me a hug. It wasn't this, oh, well, just shake a hand or whatever. And, I always think about your smile and how your energy is. And it's just this thing where it's like, I'll get on the phone and we'll be talking about CNP business and I'll be like, I got to do such and such. And you'll be like, okay, but how are you doing? How are you? What's going on with you? And you genuinely care, because I'm so used to people asking that. And I get into tiffs with people because I get to the point where don't ask me how I'm doing unless you really want an honest answer. I'd rather you just not say anything, because I'm that person. I'm that authentic, like you said, Keith, where it's like I'm vulnerable and straight up across the board. But don't bullshit me. Don't piss on me and tell me it's raining. If you don't want to know, don't fucking ask. But then there are other people like Johnny who they genuinely kind of stop me and will say, like, how are you doing? What do you need? And I appreciate that. So I just want to say that publicly. But these last two things are really, the first one is about humor, which, again, I think that in our very own unique ways, I think, with my relationships with all three of you, especially with Keith, because from the minute we met, when we were at the World AIDS Conference in 2006, we just, we met on a note where we just figured out, okay, both our asses is ignorant as fuck. We were just both ignorant as a motherfucker, and that was part of what bonded us from the beginning.
Wait. I have to say this. The Beyonce, that B-Day album was out at the time, and I enjoyed the hell out of that. Monty with that. And we shared a room at the conference, so we getting ready to go, and I'm like, you ready? Let's go get him. He rolled his eyes so hard at me.
Baby.
Let's go get him.
He soured me on that. Yes, all of that.
No, I made you love that album. Cut it out. Okay, I'm sorry.
You did, because that is one of my favorite albums of hers. I do fuck with B-Day hard, followed by Ford. That's the other one that I really rock with.
Deja Vu is one of the best workout songs like ever.
Baby.
Let that shit drop while you're on like the elliptical or the treadmill.
I used to always say it's a big titty song. It's one of them ones where you
got a lot of boom.
But again, I'm glad we kind of dived into this, because again, we wanted to just talk about humor and about how we, particularly as Black queer people and just people in general, like the importance of us just being able to find the lightness in some of this shit, because life is so heavy. And does anybody have anything they want to chime in about the role that humor has played, or how it's helped to just kind of shift energy or just kind of move the needle in certain things? Anybody?
Humor is everything.
Personal, professional, doesn't matter.
Humor is everything to me. I find something to laugh at in everything. I laugh at myself all the time, right? Like my mistakes, whatever. I make fun of myself. It is how humor is everything to me, and I try to find a reason to laugh daily and in all situations, like, because shit is so serious. It's just like, if you didn't laugh at Donald Trump, you I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say.
What about you, Daddy Rod? I see you thinking over there. Anything you have?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny Keith brought up about Donald Trump because I won't say I was laughing. I find something laughing about him because he was truly the devil.
Is
I was. What's funny is I was hearing on the radio here locally. This is God honest truth. This is happening on the radio, and they have those open mics. The radio hosts or whatever, and they were like, "Well, what do you think about Donald Trump losing?" Blah blah blah. Now, mind you, radio being that it's public radio, you can't really curse, and they usually have a 2-3 second delay to try to beat if people do curse.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they were ready for this. But this one guy said, "You know what? It felt like we've been going through 4 years of constipation." And we finally let that shit out, and it feels good. And I was in the car hearing this, and I hollered. I was like, I said, what a great
analogy
of what has been going on. And unfortunately, what he's doing now is the stench when you don't flush the toilet. But the toilet's going to be flushed, and we're going to get some clear air with Biden and Harris up in there. But
right.
When he said that, I was like, oh my gosh. But for me, like when I need something to laugh at, I look at the old TV shows. Oh my gosh. Like from Sanford and Son to the Jeffersons to Maude, to 227 and Golden Girls and A-Man and and like I can say it. My sister and I, a good friend of ours was like a sister. We used to create these satirical comedies. This is even before Living Color even hit. And we would do these audio stuff and tape them on audio cassettes. And I would let y'all listen to them, but they kind of like treasured stuff. So I don't know if I'll let you listen to them, but I was to them thing, and we would and this is like when I was like 15, 16. And this is before the computers and the internet and all this stuff. So we just being creative. And I would listen to some of that stuff, and we would just laugh and laugh and laugh. And it was a great escapism from all the stuff that was going on, whether it was Trump or COVID related stuff or personal job, whatever, family, whatever. And yeah. And actually, sometimes I find humor at the gym when I'm at the gym and I see people trying to work out. That's another conversation all itself.
Okay. Johnny, what about
this is a no judgment zone.
Right.
I don't do Planet Fitness, boo-boo.
I
don't
judge.
Right.
I hate that damn gym. How are you going to tell us to work out on the treadmill for 30 minutes to an hour, then have a whole table full of Krispy Kreme and bagels?
That is such a weird thing about that. I don't know why they do that. Humor. Yes. So humor, joy and humor. Like, yeah, it's always a thing. For me, it's interesting. So I get the most joy from when your friend call you. It happened today. Happened twice. I had one client call and one friend call, and we was just cackling. Like I was telling them about all my foolishness. They was telling me about all their foolishness, and all our foolishness collided, and we was just having a moment and I was like, you know what? I needed this laugh with you about all of this. And so I can't say enough about how important it is to have laughter, have joy, and have folks that kind of bring that out of you. I think is the thing. One of the things I didn't realize was true until moving back home. So for those who are watching, about a year ago, I literally returned to my hometown. I am in my parents' house right now. I'm in my brother's old bedroom. Is my office now. And one of the beautiful things is me and my brother had, it's so interesting, like, because you know when you grow up, like me and my brother was always like whatever, like I was the older brother, he was the younger brother, so he was always at odds about something. He's so much fun, like, and he's so cool, and we can laugh about things that only we could laugh about because we grew up in the same house, watching the same things, you know what I'm saying? So we have these moments where we can recite a whole living single scene. You know, we could do it flawlessly because we remember watching that as a kid and what we got out of those things. And so I will say that it is important for me to have people in my orbit that can make me smile in those moments when you need it. And God always does a thing, right? Them people are going to call you when you need it. I'm going to get a text from Daddy Rod when I need it. Because Daddy Rod will, Daddy, listen, babe, let me tell you something. This brother right here has looked out. When I had to leave Atlanta on a whim, I came here in November. Actually, this is when I arrived here. Is it November 12th?
Yeah.
Yep.
I arrived here November 12th, planning to go back to Atlanta. That did not happen. Daddy Rod is the person who came and helped me figure out how to empty that house out. You know what I'm saying? And he checks in. So you have to have those people that are going to make you smile and make you laugh. And that's incredibly important. So
yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that, Johnny. I think the other piece, as I'm hearing you all speak, like I said, thinking about some of the stuff that, you know, the moments that I've shared with Keith, the moments I've shared with you, and, you know, and with Daddy Rod, in terms of like, for like now, a lot of the ways that humor shows up for me is like when we're texting or we're on social media and GIFs. Baby, the way that we communicate in GIFs and talk about shit without even saying anything, just with a response. I've told people, I'm kind of like, listen, if you don't speak fluent GIF as a first language, you're not gonna work. Because I'm sarcastic as fuck. Like you said, I grew up I'm from the school of Dorothy Zbornak. I'm you know, sarcastic Julia Sugarbaker, like read you and like you don't realize you've been insulted until 2 minutes later. Kind of funny. Sorry, you know, dark.
I'm Sophia.
Right.
I'm Dorothy. I'm definitely Dorothy.
Very, very much that. So you know, you Rose and Blanche and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah, I'm Blanche to a degree.
I think we all got a little bit of that in us. But I think, like, I love that you all brought up the television things and things, you know, like I said, things that I mentioned about gifts and all those other, I think across the board, us identifying what makes us laugh and just finding a way to feel lighter. That is something that's super important for me. And even in terms of just realizing it's about the type of men that I gravitate towards, and, you know, that, you know, I realizing it's not something I've even said that I realized until it happened with people, like, you know, where it's like, when I'm with somebody that just makes me laugh because they're just silly as fuck, because I can be really serious sometimes. I can be ignorant as fuck too. But, you know, I don't get an opportunity to do that very often with somebody I'm with because I'm not with a whole lot of people. I live alone. I grew up as an only child. I rock with, you know, I don't fuck with a whole lot of people when I'm, you know, not working or having to do a lot of stuff. But in terms of like the type of men that I've been with that like I respond to, is like when I can laugh with you, when you can make me laugh and just make me feel lighter so that I don't feel so heavy and serious. That's something I've realized that I didn't realize I needed it until it showed up. And that's another way that I think humor is super important. But to that end, yes, we're talking about humor, but we really want to just focus on talking about centering joy. That's the other thing that I really wanted to kind of hit on. And there's one thing that I kind of skipped over, which we'll get to in a minute. But the thing about centering joy, I mean, if any, and Johnny, you already kind of hit on it, but I think that it's just something that's very, very important across the board because, like we said, life is very heavy. You know, we all have a lot on our plates, even before COVID and all these other kinds of things happen. And I think that so many of us were, you know, we were caught up in this rat race and feeling like we had to do, and achieve, and have output and all these other kinds of things. And I think that finding those things, I think the joy can also be that self-care and, you know, those self-preservation activities and all that other kind of stuff. But I think the biggest piece of this is just about giving people, you know, reminding people that it's important for you to figure out, especially now this year and, you know, with the time that's coming in the year to come, we have to find those ways to just kind of soak up that joy wherever we can without fail. So, I mean, did anybody else have anything else they wanted to say about that very briefly?
You got to understand sometimes joy, like you said, it's just sometimes the smallest things in life. So like, for instance, thank God for YouTube. So like I started this new job this week and sometimes it's been hectic, but I come home and for some reason I've been fiending for In Living Color. So if you're of age, In Living Color was the best show back in the early 90s. And I would look at some of the old men on whether it be men on books, men on films, and I remember the two snaps and you know, they remember like the two snaps, a twist and a kiss. And I was like, oh my God, this shit is so funny. And I would look at clips like that. I'm like, you know what? Just the simple things, you know what I'm saying? And it just you know, lets me just kind of, again, that's escapism from all what's going on. And then just like, you know what, okay, this is what I need. You know, because I think for people, sometimes when they think of joy, they got to do something big. Right. With a lot of people and all this stuff. I'm like, no, it doesn't have to be like that.
It can be, but like you said, I don't think
it can be. But that doesn't have to be. In these COVID days, that's kind of hard unless you just want to be a rogue like that and be a super spreader and shit. But, you know, for us who really take our health, you know, to, it's paramount, you know, we say, you know, we're going to stay our black ass at home. So yeah, it's the small things, you know, and like I said, we all love music, so I'll go through my crates and just put on some music, whether it be jazz, house, gospel, whatever.
Even that, Rod, I'm glad you brought that up. Even just the act of going to the record store with other people who are like, you know, vinyl heads like me. There have been so many times that Keith, you know, our friend Andre, I'm shouting you out, you know, so when you watch this, because we've had those moments when I would fly home to Chicago for Christmas and all this other kind of stuff, and we're in the record store and we see an old album and it's somebody on that album cover that's giving an old nasty pose or some sort of hair or a boot or something else, and we just like, baby, they was like, okay, they were ready for their close-up. And it's just little shit like that I just get again, like you said, it's the smallest things, but it just gives me joy because it makes me laugh. And it's like, wow, you know, whatever I might have been carrying or holding on to, even if it's just for a split second, I just feel a little bit lighter.
And sometimes the joy is like, kind of takes you back to your childhood, but the small things. Like, I'm also a big aviation fanatic, and people don't know this, but I'm, you know, I used to fly planes. I used to fly Cessna planes or whatever. So, and I had an aspiration to become a commercial airline pilot, but that didn't happen. But like, if I'm in a major city like New York or DC or LA, people find me crazy. It's like I go to, especially in LA, if you know about In-N-Out Burger, which is very popular on the West Coast. There's one on Sepulveda Boulevard, right by the LAX airport. I can just sit there for 3 hours and just watch planes take off and land. People like, you're doing all that? I'm like, don't you worry about me.
Right, because it gives you joy, and you don't. And I think
Let me eat my burger, fries, and get my Randy's donut and watch these planes take off and land. Don't bother me.
And I think I love that you mentioned that, because I think that's the last thing that I want to kind of focus on in turn while we're talking about joy is I think that there has to be, and again, I don't think this has to be confrontational. It's just like I said about boundaries or whatever, or combative, but I think that there has to be, when you get to a certain point and you do understand the importance of self-care and advocating for yourself and standing up and showing up for yourself, there has to be this insistence upon joy or insistence upon somebody else not taking that away. that you have to push back on. Because, and I'll say this very quickly because I don't want to get into a whole thing or whatever, but it happened on Saturday. Soon as the race was called and everything was called about, about the president-elect, I had people like, oh, well, it's this and da, 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 da. And I was kind of like, can y'all just let us have this just for this minute? Like, I just need to have this moment. It's been a real fucked up year. And this is, no, it's not the answer. It's not everything, but I'm gonna have this moment and you're not gonna take that away from me. And I think that sometimes people don't necessarily mean to be, Debbie Downers, and sometimes they do, but I don't give a fuck whether you're meant to or not. What you're not gonna do is come over here and raid on my parade. If you want to be miserable or neurotic, take your ass over there. Like, so I just think that that's important in terms of insistence upon that, because we have to push back and we have to, we have to advocate for that for ourselves.
Right.
So, Johnny, you had something you wanted to say?
Just really quickly, one of the things that I have been having a lot of conversation about recently since being back home, when you go away and you do some therapy and like you come back different, right? The stuff that triggered me as a kid just don't trigger. Like, I'm like, oh, I know where that comes from. I've dealt with that. I've been finding myself insisting on joy for my family in a way, like, and having them be okay with it. Like, you do realize that you could just do this thing that you like to do that ain't bothering, that ain't doing you no harm. It ain't doing nobody else no harm. It's just some stuff that you like. You could just do that. And it will make your day better. Because right. I'm going to go and watch painting right now because I love watching painting. I'm just going to go and watch it. It's on the YouTube. So I'm going to do that. You do your thing. And so I find myself insisting that, and so for, folks that are taking this in, love the things that bring you joy and do them as often as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
That is, and quite frankly, that is a form of self-care. So I guess that is something that I regularly do. Yeah, it's like, hey, if you like a thing, like Rodney said, watching The Living Color on YouTube, do that thing because it'll make you smile, it'll bring you joy, and then you can put that one foot in front of the next after that.
Thank you, Johnny. What about you, Keith? You got anything you want to say about joy?
I miss roller coasters.
Yes, I last year when I was in Chicago for the 4th of July and we were trying to work it out because his ass was going to Six Flags, and up until that morning we were trying to figure it out, and I was like, I'm gonna have to miss y'all this time. But yes, we got to make that happen again. And
I think that might have been the last time I went. Like, it's it feels strange to go through a whole season. Because generally I'm at Six Flags a couple times a year in different cities, and like that's just my thing, right? That's where I let everything go. And most of my joy on roller coasters, because I'm not freaked out by roller coasters, so most of my joy comes from watching other people's reactions to it and looking at the picture after the fact and seeing people losing their mind while I'm like
talking shit about them, because that's what you do.
That's so much fun to me. I miss that.
You know why? Because you have no compassion. That's an inside joke between me and him.
I have had to find other ways, right, to supplement or to get around not being able to go to amusement parks. So right now it's my puppy, who is just
keeping you busy.
But he brings me joy.
That's good. Okay, so with that, the one thing that I did skip over, and I guess in my mind I had put this before, the centering joy and the humor piece, but I think this is a great way to end. And then we're just going to do some acknowledgments and we're going to wrap up. But the other thing that was a part of this whole thing around healing, and I think that this is a perfect kind of stopping point or ending point for the whole project, and especially for this segment, is talking about the importance of chosen family and community, and finding those people that, are your, for lack of a better term, because we say it all the time with CMP, finding your tribe, finding those people that are your, that are your tribe and your people, if you will, that see you, that know you, that affirm you, that love you, that tell you the truth, that call you on your bullshit. But, across the board, you know what I'm saying? And it doesn't mean that those relationships are not without, you know, hiccups or cracks in the foundation or what have you. But even when you have those, you find ways to work through those things, you know, without it kind of severing the relationship or all those other kinds of things. But I think that chosen family is just super, super important. And especially now, like we said, because we know the holidays are going to be very difficult this year. I just wanted to talk about that and highlight that very briefly. So does anybody have anything in parting that they wanted to share about the significance of chosen family, or how that's what role that has played in your life?
I know that for me, you know, when I left home in 2004 is when I left. I actually left home in 1999, but I left the area. I was still around my family. So I left the area in 2004. And I will say that chosen family, I would not have survived, you know, a Detroit and in Ohio and in Atlanta without having people there as my backbone and people that I've learned from. So the reason why I could come back here and be the person that I am is because those people have, to your point, Monty, held me accountable, you know, and had to call me on my shit. And that is a beautiful thing. So my chosen family are just my family now. You know what I'm saying? And there are people who know everything. So if something happened to me tomorrow, my chosen family know what my wishes are. You know what I'm saying? Like, they know where the stuff is at. You know what I'm saying? To get stuff done, and are prepared to be the backbone for my family. You know what I'm saying? Like, they know what to do.
Right.
And that's so, yeah. Find those people, and keep those people close. Find those folks and keep them close, man. Because it'll help. It helps you.
Yes. Thank you, Johnny. Rod or Keith, anything?
I just piggyback off what Johnny said. It's very, very true. You know, especially for those who may have not had a very strong family unit at home, having your own, creating your own chosen family is even more important, you know. So, but if you're blessed to have a loving, loving house. So when I mean by loving, I also mean like very supportive, you know, you being gay, bisexual, you know, because that I don't care what anyone says, that in itself is a blessing in itself. So when you have that, and then you can travel and move like to like a new state or whatever, and creating your own new family, having that kind of double family, it's a good thing, you know. And yeah, everything Johnny said, so true.
Okay, thank you. Keith, what about you?
Yeah, I think I just want to, point out that the operative word is chosen. And so people should absolutely respect and feel honored by the fact that you've chosen them to be a part of your chosen family. But you also have the right at any given moment to choose again.
How about it? Come on with that. That was real Iyanla-esque. That's one of them. You need to meet people where they are, and sometimes you need to leave them there.
That's all.
Right. Yes, definitely. Well, thank you guys for that. So we're going to get ready to wrap up. These conversations are always amazing, and just the feedback that we've gotten from people has been great. And I know that this one is not going to be any different in that regard. But with this one, because this is the last one of the series, I wanted to just kind of throw something out very briefly I kind of prompted you guys about all of this ahead of time to ask, like, looking at 2020 and looking at next year and all the stuff that we've talked about in terms of, how a lot of this shit shows up for us as Black queer men, being in touch with our emotions, dealing with those wounds and those challenges, dealing with childhood upbringing or trauma or those things that we've carried with us, and getting to this point where this is like almost like the course study. The healing is the course study, because that's where you got to go in and you got to do the shit. You got to actually be active and figure it out. So that's the most important part. But looking at all of that as a composite, just very quickly, if you had to sum this up into like a statement or a couple of words or anything, where do we go from here? I mean, where do you think Is it tips? Is it a quote? Is there anything that you feel like you want to offer up in terms of looking at, yourself, your tribe, the community, and us as a world at large based on what we've been dealing with? And if you don't have anything, that's okay, but I just want to give you an opportunity to just kind of chime in on this. Because I see all your wheels turning.
I have been holding on since the beginning of this conversation. I've been holding on to an idea for programming of some sorts that helps us to navigate therapy and the therapy process, right? I think in the same way that we do for our physical health, we have peer navigators who get us to appointments and all of that kind of stuff. For people who need that kind of thing, I do think that we need to think about supportive programming that really helps people to navigate the therapy process, from figuring out, like, finding the right therapist, understanding when to say, no, this isn't the therapist for me. And then, like, how to navigate certain tough conversations within the therapy process. I think that that's a program waiting to happen. And so that, for me, that's kind of, and that's my nature, that's my character, right? That's what I'm thinking about, how to take from this and do something.
That's real. And that's powerful. That's treasure right there. So thank you for that. Johnny or Daddy Rod, you have anything?
I think for me, it is the reminder for myself and for others that you don't have to do this life thing by yourself. You know what I'm saying? There are people who love you and care for you that sometimes we don't even see, but if we took a step back and looked, we'd see. And if 2020 has shown us anything, is that these moments are precious, and that just that we don't have to do it by ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We have a tribe of folks that are around us who will be there for us. And so let them love on you. I'm gonna say it that way. Like, let them love on you, because then you can continue to do what it is that you do. So receive that, and you will be filled up so you can go out and give it back.
Thank you, Johnny. Daddy Rod, what about you?
Actually, Johnny pretty much summarized what I was going to say.
Did he just Oprah the whole conversation?
He just did great.
I'm so sorry.
It was powerful.
No, but he really did, because we can't neglect, what's the word I'm trying to say? We can't shy away from the fact that this time of year is very depressing for a lot of people, for a lot of various reasons.
Right.
And some people, maybe because out of pride, don't want to mention that they're feeling lonely or depressed or whatever. And especially with what's happened with COVID this year, and we've just lost so many people. And even for the people we lost who didn't pass away from COVID, but yet it affected how we celebrate their life. It's a lot for a lot of people. And so I will encourage anyone out there to, like Johnny said, if someone is genuinely loving on you, accept it. So sometimes a lot of people kind of don't accept it for whatever reason. That's another conversation all itself, and where therapy kicks in. But accept it. And then I guess for me, and I was taught this as a child from my mother, I get that joy again for helping other people. So I do it all year round, but especially during this time of year, I really go to group homes with teenagers, or I go to I can't go to senior citizen areas now because of COVID, and I can't even really do group homes anymore either because of COVID. But I'll try to find some way I can hook up with either an organization or a charity or a church to maybe hand out meals to people and all that. Because again, that gives me joy, because we all have our stuff we're going through. But baby, we know there are people who are going through a lot worse.
This is true.
And I get that joy if I can put a smile on their face, even for a few minutes, and let them know that God's love is here, baby. Through all what's happened in the last 4 years and what's going on this past, especially this year, you are loved. And at least let me love on you by whether it be giving you a hug or giving you some food or whatever. Just let me do what I need to do. So that's what I'm going to do. And I encourage everyone else to do the same.
No, I thank you. I appreciate that. And that's real. I think for me, what I just want to offer up to everybody is, for those of us that have made it through this far, we have to give ourselves credit and pat ourselves on the back and cut ourselves some slack and just not be be more gentle with ourselves. And I'm speaking to myself because I'm my own worst enemy in so many fucking ways. And in wrapping this up, because I thought about it as Rodney, as you were talking, and Johnny, and I'm trying not to get emotional when I say this, but I want to thank all of you, and I'm getting to acknowledgments in a minute, but doing this has been a lot of work. It's been terrifying, but this has saved me. It saved me in some serious ways. Johnny knows this. Keith knows. Well, all of y'all know this because I told you this. I had a suicide attempt or a bout with it in July, and I just had to reach out and ask for help. That was it. And I normally don't do that. I isolate. I figure it out and I stew and I listen to music and do all that other stuff. But I was like, I can't do this because COVID and all the other stuff. I was like, I just don't have any more fight in me. And I had to reach out to Andre, Keith, to our friend of mine, Andre Derry in Chicago, because he's in therapy, and we talk, and we hold each other accountable. And I just told him I wasn't okay, and I was able to just talk later that day and just say, like, hey, this is what I'm going through, and he listened. And from there, 3 weeks later, Leanne LaHavas's album, that third album, that self-titled album came out, and it was like an exercise in healing yourself, cleaning up your shit, and remembering that you are the constant and that you matter. And I went through all of that, and that was when I started talking to you, Johnny, about this idea, and it all just kind of came together. And then I think the biggest piece for me, and this made me very emotional, when we had our first interest meeting about this whole thing, and we were asking everybody to introduce themselves, because a lot of y'all know each other, but some don't. And it was like 12, 14 of y'all on a Zoom call all at the same time. And I was asking you each, why you chose to be a part of it. And I'm thinking y'all are going to say something completely different. And almost everybody was like, I'm here because of Monty, because I love him and I care about him and I believe in him. And I wasn't expecting you all to say that. I thought you were going to say because I want this to help people or whatever. But it was just like, wow. Like, it was just like, sometimes we don't realize what we mean to people. And, I just want to let y'all know how grateful I am for all of you, because you've saved me. And hopefully this saves somebody else, because that's my goal in doing this is, yeah, I was going through shit and this has been a lot of work and I'm fucking tired, but I feel like it's been worth it. And I'm just so grateful. So to each of you, and yeah, I'm just going to very not so gracefully just segue into the acknowledgements. Before I get into a full Oprah ugly cry, I just want to say thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Daddy Rod. Thank you, Keith Green. Thank you, David Milbranch, Mark Tuggle, Daniel Downer, all of my panelists, all of my actors, my performers, Rodney, Michael Ward, Rich Rocket, all the people that you're going to see tonight, just everybody. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank George for just being my project coordinator, who's sitting here looking at me right now. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I'm just so grateful for you. And like, this has been a gift. And for me, with this year, I didn't know what this year was going to be, but it wasn't this. But, in the ways that, as much as things have fallen apart in a lot of ways, a whole lot more shit just came together in beautiful, beautiful, sacred ways. So as hard as this shit has been, and as hard as it might be for us next year, if we made it this far, we're fucking resilient and we can get through the rest of it. You don't have to figure it all out at once. You don't. We can figure it out one step, one day, one breath at a time. Reach out, ask for help. If you don't have a tribe, if you don't have a circle, those people find their way to you, and you find your way to those people when you need to. So I would say just keep your heart and your mind open and ask for help. I want to acknowledge Charles Stevens and Johnny Ray Cornegay from CMP, the whole Counter Narrative tribe. There's been so many of y'all brothers that are a part of this. I could not have done this without you all. I'm just so very grateful for you all. I want to acknowledge John Stoltenberg and DC Metro Theater Arts for always just supporting us and writing articles and telling people across the country and the DC area about what we do. Peter Stevens, Racine Pendarvis and the Ask Racine Show, Alan Sharp, whose birthday is today while we're filming. Yes, this is airing on December 6th, but this was filmed on November 12th. It's Alan's birthday, so happy birthday. We love you. I'm so very grateful for you. And, you know, I just want to thank everybody, all of our community partners, everybody who donated, everybody who told somebody, everybody who tuned in or shared it with somebody else. I'm forgetting some other people like Art Jackson, just again. I just want to acknowledge everybody who was a part of this, who tuned in. And I'm just so very grateful. If you want to donate, if you want to contribute, there is a link and a button on the website for you to do so to continue to support this work that we do. But the biggest thing, I'm not even asking for that. I'm just asking for people to continue to tell folks about what we do. Tell people about Brave Soul Collective. Tell people about CMP. Like, connect other folks to this work, because we are here trying to heal ourselves and trying to heal other people and just find a way through this shit so we can just feel light and feel joy and feel affirmed. So all of those things are just super important. I'm just super, super grateful for all of you. For anybody who is interested in getting one of these beautiful Black Men Feel t-shirts that all of our panelists are rocking and wearing, all you got to do is just email us at wearebravesouls.com. We have plenty of t-shirts in a lot of different sizes. Just shoot us an email and we will let you know how much they are, and, you know, get your information and we can get it paid for and get it shipped off to you. But I'm just so, so grateful to all of you. And I don't think I'm forgetting anything. I just want to, again, say thank you to all of you. And this one has been amazing. I was nervous about the first one, and it's mainly been technology shit that I've been like tearing my hair out about. But once we get it on and we get started, it's just always super powerful. We had a hiccup with Act 2 where we had to record a whole panel discussion a second time, and I was pissed off about that. But the second one was even more amazing than the first. And with this one, I'm just so, so grateful for all of you. So Keith, Daddy Rod, Johnny, all of y'all, I just thank you. I'm so, so very grateful. And if you have any parting words, I welcome you to offer those up now. If there's anything you want to say in closing.
I want to say I love you, Monty.
Yeah, I love you, Monty.
I'm sorry, Keith.
No, I was saying the same thing. So yeah. Thank you, and I love you, Monty.
Yes, and I do want to. It's crazy, the date, November 12th. I want to speak the name of Antron Rashad Olu Kayode, who passed away in 2017. Just a brilliant artist. He's literally on my wall over there. Y'all can't see him. But I want to call his name. Antron, we love you. And yeah, we miss you.
Yes, definitely. And this, we dedicate this to everyone who has lost someone this year, everyone who's lost someone, period. We just offer this up, and we just offer this up to everybody out of a space of love, because that's the only thing that's gonna get us through. And sometimes we got to just pour that love back on ourselves. And again, I'm talking to my fucking self. But I'm just super, super grateful. I can't wait for everybody to just soak up this work. Please, please check out the performance video that's right next to this one that you will see tonight. We have some amazing work, just some brilliant pieces that speak to everything we just talked about through the form of artistry. So, we have some spoken word stuff, we have some theatrical things, we have some multimedia things, and I just really, want for you all to soak it in and just process and digest however you need to. But again, on behalf of Brave Soul Collective and everybody involved with this project, I think this was amazing, and this is something we might, wind up doing every year, and just creating something that, whether we can gather in public or not, doing like a virtual event so that everybody across the country and across the world can see this work and participate in it and feel, more involved. So I'm just super grateful for that. And Yeah, I'm just asking everybody to just take care of yourselves, love on yourselves, be safe, wear a mask, do what you got to do.
Wash your
Wear your
hands.
mask.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands and put the mask, just put it on.
And this face that Keith is making, like, y'all nasty. Wash your hands. But yes, all of that. And with that, I know this has been a long conversation, but for all of y'all who have stuck with this, thank you. We love you. And I'm just so very grateful. And stick around because I have another announcement after we finish this part that will give you a little clue into what we got coming next year and some exciting things. So we're going to be back with more, but we're going to take a break because I need one. But with all of that, again, thank you. I love y'all. I'm so very grateful. And yeah, so that's where we're going to stop. And, you know, you all just hang on for a bit. But thank you all, audience. Thank you, Brave Soul family. And we will see you in 2021. Ashe. Amen.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Monty.
All right, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that vibrant discussion that we just had. And before we let you all go for the end of this whole event and for the night, I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you to everybody, everyone who has watched this work, everyone who has spread the word, everyone who has covered this or told anybody about it or made a donation. On behalf of Brave Soul Collective and all of our constituents, all of our members and everybody, I just want to say thank you. I'm just very grateful for the support, for the interest, and I don't take it for granted. So I just had to make sure I got that out of the way first. And, you know, now that we've gotten acts 1, 2, and 3 out of the way and giving you all this content, we just wanted to give you a quick preview of what we have coming up in 2021, because as someone else just reminded me recently, 2021 will mark 15 years that Brave Soul Collective has been in existence. And I don't know where the fuck that time went or how that happened, because to me, being at the head of all of this and with all the things that have happened in my life personally and professionally, in addition to all the work with Brave Soul Collective, I feel like I just blinked my eyes and 15 years just went by. But we have some exciting things coming up to celebrate our 15-year anniversary. So we just hope that you will stick with us and continue to join us and see what we have in store. The most important thing I want to bring up about 2021 that we will be doing in January is we have been given the opportunity to complete a residency at the Kennedy Center here in Washington, D.C. We've done countless performances with the Kennedy Center in August and September during their Page to Stage New Play Festival. And because they couldn't do that this year, they came up with another plan to offer certain groups and theater companies residencies. And we were one of the ones they reached out to. So in order to kick off 2021, I figured what better way to kick off our 15th year than to do this residency at the Kennedy Center. So we'll be workshopping some new pieces, remounting and reworking some old pieces, rehearsing some things, and then standing them up and getting some stuff on camera and getting some footage. And some of that footage you'll see in in February, because in February, on February 7th, it'll be National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. There have been some years in the past where we've done a performance, and this year we will continue to follow suit, except it'll be virtual, just like this. So some of that work that we do in January with filming some stuff you'll see in that performance, and some stuff that we couldn't fit into this, you'll probably see in February if you stick with us. So we just want to ask you to continue to just support the work and follow us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, so you can keep in contact with us. Make sure you join our mailing list on the website, so you can stay up to date on what's happening and all of those kinds of things. And we just look forward to you joining us in 2021. And lastly, we also want to encourage you to continue to follow and support CNP. They have some very exciting things coming up in 2021 as well. And we will be continuing to serve as an affiliate and a partner with them and doing some work. And because our missions align and because all of the work that they do is definitely about affirming the lives of Black gay men, I just have to make sure I lift them up and just say thank you to them. And I'm just very grateful for their support of Brave Soul Collective and what it is that we do. So we just want to send that love back to them and just ask you to follow them on social media, visit their website at thecounternarrative.org, and just continue to support that work, because they got some great things that they're continuing to do in 2021. So on that note, on behalf of Brave Soul Collective and everybody involved with this whole operation, We want to say thank you. We wish everybody happy holidays. We want everybody to please, please, please be safe during these holidays and find those ways that you can enjoy yourself, center some joy, practice self-care, and do all those things to just love on yourself. And if you got to love on your other family and chosen family from a distance for now, that's what we got to do. But please be safe, and please join us in 2021. And with that, we're going to say good night, and we'll see you next year. Okay? Bye-bye.